all know there are culture shocks that you'll experience when traveling or moving abroad. But what are the culture shocks you'll experience when traveling or moving to Argentina? Could you handle them? Would you even like them? Today's video can jump into exactly that. I have lived here for over a year and I experienced all those shocks, some of them good and some of them maybe I don't love so much. In today's video, we're gonna dive into the top 16 culture shocks that I experienced while living here in Argentina with locals, my Argentine girlfriend, as well as traveling throughout Argentina. And let me tell you, the longer you stay in a place, the longer you stay in a culture as rich as this one here in Argentina, the more you'll really realize those culture shocks day by day. So especially for all you digital nomads out there looking to base here, but for those looking to possibly move here, pay attention as we get deeper in today's video. You'll see kind of from 16 down to 1 as we get closer to the last culture shocks I mentioned, that those are the ones most likely that you'll see kind of play into daily life more and more and more. And some of them you might like, some of them might not. So stick around to the end. Number 16, the language. Here, the Spanish is a little bit different in Argentina. Let me tell you why. So if you grew up in the United States like myself, you probably are more familiar with the Mexican accent, or maybe in Europe and familiar with the Spanish accent. But here, it's a Rio de Platense Espanol, a Rio de Platense Spanish of the Rio de Plata area down here. How is it different? Well, it's different for how they pronounce all of the things. So if you're used to playa, or the beach, it's playa. You're used to calle, or the street, it's calle. You're used to taking something por lavar, it's por llevar. Or if you're Norteamericano and you're a Yankee, they say Yankee here in Argentina. So the language is definitely different here. That Rio de Platense Spanish. It might be a culture shock for you when traveling or moving to Argentina. Number 15, the exchange rate. In the case of Argentina, the economic situation has been pretty turbulent over the last decades. And if you read the news a lot, you'll know that there's a parallel currency or exchange rate here called the blue dollar. So let me explain. So basically when I came back in 2015, the word on the street was to literally go to Florida Street, as you can see here, and you'll be hearing people say cambio, cambio, cambio. And basically you would have your crisp, higher denomination US dollars and exchange on the street and get a certain rate. As time has went on, Western Union has joined that game. And in my opinion, in 2022, 2023, now 2024, that is a safer way to go. And basically then you have to get used to basically carrying a lot of Argentine pesos around, paying in cash everywhere. And we'll also see with the new President Javier Milei, if things do change, and the next year things might dollarize. So this culture shock of this parallel exchange rate, the blue dollar, might not exist in a year's time. Number 14, the football culture or the extreme passion behind football in this country. I arrived here in late 2022, and if you're a football fan, you know that was exactly when the World Cup is going on. I got swept in the passion that was Argentina becoming the champions of the world, as well as being here longer and seeing people really support Boca or River or other local teams. This is a passionate country about football. You will be in for a culture shock and how much everybody loves football here in Argentina. Number 13, asado, or Argentine obsession with eating meat. Now, you've probably heard this is probably one of the more known cultural things out there about traveling to Argentina, but if you choose to move here as a digital nomad or an expat and live here, you will see it at a deeper level. Pretty much as you walk the streets here in Buenos Aires, you'll see a carniceria or a meat shop on most blocks. As well, if you're here for a long period of time, you know that for most family occasions or celebrations, you're gonna have an asado. Number 12, dinner time and siesta time, and how that's all related. Late, and late. So starting first with siesta time. So most shops are closed from 2 to 4:30 and also on Sundays, and that's because they usually have their break for siesta time or merienda time in the mid to late afternoon, where you'll have your mate, maybe your media lunas, and therefore that pushes back the timeline for dinner time. If you're like from North America like myself, you're probably eating dinner between 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, latest 8 o'clock. Here, usually dinner's around 9, 9:30, 10, or later. So if you're staying here longer, especially those digital nomads or expats, that might be a big adjustment. I know it was for me, and that's one of the harder culture shocks to handle living here for over a year, is eating dinner perpetually late. But that is a culture shock you can expect. Late, that siesta time, that dinner time. Number 11, relaxed culture and a lot of feriados or national holidays. So if you're here for a bit or passing through, you see a lot of locals drinking mate in a park, especially on the weekend, kind of chilling out, enjoying their time. You'll also see that if you're hanging out with locals here, that when you go to an event or an engagement, it's not just a quick, hey, stopping by for an hour, 2 hours. Usually it's longer, kind of a bigger part of your day, and you might be familiar with if you're from the USA. And the last thing to note is that if you're here for a longer period of time, such as the digital nomad or an expat, you realize there's a lot of feriados or holidays, a lot more than the USA, and it might kind of go with your schedule if you're working down here, or for somewhere else, it might be a little bit of a conflict, but the locals have many days off, the most in Latin America actually at 19, but for me it was a shock at first at how many holidays there were, how often they were. The bidet culture. If you're from the USA, it's probably foreign to your butt cheeks, not so much to the Europeans out there as it has its European roots, but overall I would say it's something you either like or you don't like. In my experience, I use it a little bit. It's kind of different, kind of weird.
North American has never used a bidet in his life. So if you want to see my reaction, stay tuned to the very end. And then you're gonna turn this off.
But overall, it's a different experience. So either you're on board or you're not with the bidet culture, but you'll find a lot of them here in Argentina. Number 9, when I first arrived here in 2015, I saw a lot of big grand streets, a lot of statues, a lot of big park, as well as more specifically, a lot of pasta places, a lot of bakeries, a lot of pizza shops. And I was like, is this Argentina or is this Italy? I really realized that there's a lot of Italian immigration. Actually, 60% they say of Argentines can actually trace their lineage back to Italy. And overall, if you listen to the cadence of Argentines, especially Porteños speaking Rio de Platense Espanol, you will see a lot of this hand movements, a lot of this. Sometimes I find myself doing this as well because of the amount that my Argentine girlfriend goes like this to me. So it is a good shock, but maybe something you didn't expect, like myself, when first traveling or moving here to Argentina. Hey everyone, if you guys are really getting value out of hearing about these culture shocks that you can expect when traveling or moving to Argentina, I would love it if you smash the subscribe button, give us a like as well, maybe drop some comments if you can relate, you've been here before, or if you've got some questions, or maybe send it to a friend if you think they'll enjoy this video, either for traveling purposes or entertainment value. And also check out the Argentina playlist right here. I'm building it out for a bit now, a lot of videos from going down to Patagonia, going up north to Iguazu, as well as experiencing life as a Yankee or a foreigner here in Buenos Aires. There's a ton packed there, a ton of value, so hopefully you enjoy it. And now, let's jump back into the video. Number 8, kissing culture. What is that? Well, when I first got back down here this time in 2022, arrived in Argentina, walking through Aeroparque Airport, I saw two guys walk up to each other and give a nice wet kiss on the cheek, or that's what it looked like. And as I've spent time here longer, I realized that's really just part of the open society here, the real familial, the real kind of bring you in for the real hug, if you will. Not exactly a kiss, more kind of like an air kiss on the top of the cheek, but it's a lot different than you want to expect in the USA, where if you don't know somebody that well, or it's the first time you're meeting them, you usually give them a nice old handshake, or after some time a hug. So you might like it, you might not like it, but it is something different and might be a culture shock for you when either traveling through or basing here in Argentina. Number 7, the Milanesa obsession. It is a rite of passage, if you will, or you can almost assume that all Argentines will love their Milanesas, whether it's a Milanesa de pollo, Milanesa de carne, a chicken, or a meat Milanesa. You can expect there's a lot of options out there, usually paired with papas or French fries, potatoes. For me, myself, as someone from the United States, I was like, what's the big deal? It's a chicken cutlet. I grew up having them all the time, but it is very popular here. You can go to the restaurant and ask for a chicken Milanesa, and you'll be almost like a local, almost like an Argentine, really enjoying your Milanesa. Culture shock number 6, the mate obsession and sharing. So if you're going down to Argentina, you might see everybody carrying this contraption right here. So basically, this is the mate experience. It can be found in Paraguay, Uruguay, as well as Argentina. What exactly is it? So basically, you have kind of ground up tea leaves called yerba in a bag like this. You mix that in a contraption like this, almost like the gourd thing they call it, with hot water, and then you use the bombilla here to sip it out. As well as you share it in a group, so it's a communal activity usually, not just by yourself. So what was the biggest shock for me is this new thing called mate. I never had it before, as well as having it so frequently, usually every afternoon or especially on the weekends, as well as sharing my drink with everybody else in the community is something different. And you might find it to be a culture shock if you have the opportunity to try it when traveling through Argentina or settling there as a digital nomad. Culture shock number 5, merienda and not croissants. So if you come down to Argentina, you realize that snack time during that kind of siesta time in the early to mid-afternoon is a serious thing here. That's where you usually have the mate experience, as well as some facturas, maybe some media lunas, the kind of like half moons. They look like croissants, but they're not. And usually Argentines kind of abide by this religiously every day of the week, and especially on Sundays on the weekend. They want to relax, kick back, maybe in the park with friends. And if you come down here to travel Argentina, or especially if you're staying here longer, you'll have this experience. For me as a Yankee North Americana, I'm used to go, go, go. Maybe I snack throughout the day, but I don't have a specific time. So that was really the culture shock when living in Argentina. Culture shock number 4, go with the flow and be aware. So in Argentina, everything from protests to power outages to dog poop on the streets to loud street vendors, it is different than you might experience, especially if you're coming from North America. And this is why. More similar to European society, there are a lot of protests about different things, about human rights things, about different labor practices, stuff like that. Power outages can happen too. More common in the summertime, but sometimes in the winter, depending on what barrio you're in Buenos Aires or the parts of the country. So be aware if you're working remote or something like that, it might affect your everyday. Dog poop, it's a thing. It's also interesting in Argentina, you see a lot of dog walkers walking huge packs of dogs, more than I ever saw in New York City or any other major city out there. And for some reason, nobody cleans up the poop. So make sure you're kind of navigating around those landmines. You don't want to step in a big pile of.
So if you're down here in Buenos Aires, this is a sound you will often hear.
The street vendors. If you're kind of doing a filming like this for YouTube or something like that, or doing an online meeting on Zoom, you might be interrupted by somebody going down the street and it'll come around in the afternoons and it's quite loud and actually interrupted many of these videos. So be aware of those things when you're passing through or settling in Argentina. Culture shock number 3. So Coto, Carrefour, and Dia are the bigger grocery store chains in Argentina. But if you're staying longer, especially, you want to save money, you do not want to shop there for most of your things. You want to go to the local meat shops, the carnicerias, the local bakeries, the panaderias, the local cheese shops, as well as the local pasta shops to get all of your goods. And don't forget your veggies at the local verduleria. That is where I shopped for all the things that we're having.
Okay, so I'm just saying, wait, Brian, what's the actual culture shock here? Well, the culture shock for me, living there for over a year, was how you shopped. Instead of streamlining and going to the Cotos, Dias, or Carrefours for everything, it was going to the local mom and pop stores for each individual thing, whether it's veggies, meat, queso, and that takes a lot more time to do. So getting used to that style of shopping was the culture shock when living in Argentina.
Culture shock number 2, the WhatsApp obsession. Now, if you're a traveler like myself, you probably use WhatsApp or WeChat or maybe Signal when traveling throughout the world, communicating with your family back home. Here in Argentina, the WhatsApp use is on another level, in my opinion. Not only is it used by the everyday person, but also businesses, and everybody loves the voice feature. So you can see walking down the streets, kind of talking on their phones, and they're basically sending long voice messages back and forth. So it's really interesting to see how big WhatsApp is in Argentina. The number 1 culture shock for me when living over a year in Argentina was yendo and on time. Being on time is kind of elusive in Argentina. Now, coming from the USA and especially being a New Yorker, for me, it's very much go, 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 and you set plans and you're on time. In Argentina, that concept is totally foreign and totally different. People there are so flexible, they kind of make plans last minute, everybody will show up. Will people be on time? Usually not 20, 30 minutes late. And that's something you gotta get used to. For me, it's kind of like, oh, everybody's supposed to be here at 3 o'clock. Well, it's 3:30, 3:45. Where are people? They'll get here whenever they get here. Yendo kind of means they're coming and they'll get there when, who knows, but eventually they'll get there. For me, I got used to it, but at times it's kind of frustrating when living in Argentina for over a year. All right, so after hearing all those culture shocks of living in Argentina, the lifestyle there, could you handle it? Would you want to stay there for just a little bit, or could you handle living in it for over a year like myself? For me being there over a year, some of them I did like, some of them were cool and new and interesting, and some of them I really didn't like. They were hard to endure day by day. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed this video, found a lot of value. If you did, send this video over to a friend, and definitely drop some comments down below, whether again, you like some of these culture shocks, or whether you think, I couldn't do that. You know, to the next video, do not forget to explore more, and I'll see you there.